Today we are going to review that chromatic scale that we talked about last time, which is basically just a combination of the right hand exercise. You'll be using a pick, I believe. You just want to kind of alternate your picking. I don't seem to have a pick here, so I'm just going to use my fingers. But remember, just whatever direction that you're picking, you want to just alternate it. If you're picking down for the first note, then pick up for the next. And basically, just to give a quick review of the chromatic exercise, you want to just take it nice and slow and try. Right now, we just want to focus on the fretting process. We want to try and avoid like breaking the sound before moving on to the next note. So the way to do that is just first get used to playing it in what's called half notes. Okay. Now a half note is basically just 2 beats. Okay. So when you play a half note, you're just going to hold the note for 2 beats. Okay. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, and you keep the pressure down even when you go on to the next finger. Now, as you try and go up to the pinky, that's going to make it more and more difficult, but trying to do so allows you to kind of make sure that you're keeping your hand in the right position, and eventually your muscle memory will kind of learn that position and start to feel more comfortable with it. So try not to get discouraged if it's, if you're not really kind of pulling it off. At first you always need to accept a certain amount of sloppiness, for lack of a better phrase, just so, it takes time to just get good at the exercises. So as long as you're just kind of running through it for a few minutes each day, you should start to notice a little more dexterity. A little more ease kind of holding these notes down and going on to the next one without breaking the sound. It's almost what they call a legato play. Okay. And that just basically means smooth connected notes. And again, in our chromatic scale, we're doing every single fret or box in our guitar. Remember, each one of these boxes is called a fret. Okay, so again, we want to learn the names of the strings both numerically and alphabetically, just so communicating through the lesson videos like this will be a lot more easy, just more efficient. But anyway, so as you go through it, let's go through it together. We're gonna try 1 and 2. Actually, I'm sorry. Let's hold it for 2 beats. Okay, we're gonna go 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. Okay, so once you get up to the top, though, that's not going to be the end of the exercise. Remember, technically, this to most people seems like the bottom string, but remember, we always want to describe things in terms of tonal direction, and these are higher notes, while these are lower notes. So when we say higher, we're meaning up here, and lower is down there. Okay, so once we get up to the very top note in that position, our pinky at the 4th fret of the 1st string, the high E string, we want to just kind of change direction and start slowly going back. And again, if it's hard to kind of keep very even, you always want to kind of slow down. But you basically want to try and first get used to playing half notes. And just take your time, let each note ring out. Okay. Now, for this week, it's going to kind of take you some time to get used to that. So really kind of have patience and go through it as slow as you need to. Remember, there's no rush for any of this stuff. Everybody kind of progresses at their own rate. So you want to make sure that you're just getting quality practice time. If you're kind of sitting there not really paying attention to how clearly or how long you're holding the notes, then you can practice it as much as you want. You're really not getting everything that you can out of the practice. So remember that the counting and playing slow is going to be the best ways to progress at something. Okay. Now for this week, we want to go through that chromatic alphabet, and we're just going to select just the natural notes. Okay. So as you go through it, now remember that chromatic alphabet has those sharp and flat notes in between it. A sharp note means a half step above, and a flat note means a half step below. Okay, so if I were to play, like, this is my E string, if I were to say, let's play an E sharp, we would go to the 1st fret, because the 1st fret is 1/2 step above the open string. Okay, and this is your low E string, so this would be E, and then this would be F, and then this would be F sharp, meaning a half step above F, or it also could be called a G flat, because F comes after G, and you have this in-between note right here. So it's 1/2 step above the F, but it's also 1/2 step below the G, right? So these notes actually have 2 different names for these sharp or flat. Every sharp note can also be called a flat, and every flat note can also be called a sharp, depending on whether or not you're looking at it from the note before or the note after. Okay, so again, let's just go through the chromatic alphabet just so we can kind of name every note. And you'll see that it goes alphabetically, but these in-between notes will usually if I'm going up, ascending, from low notes to high notes, I'll just call those in-between notes sharps. And if I'm descending, going from high notes to low notes, I'll call those notes flats. Okay, and I always like to remember like a flat is like a flat tire, so it goes down. It loses air and goes down. And a sharp, I just remember, is forward. Flat is down. Okay, so, or I guess I should say sharp is higher and flat is down. Okay, but anyway, you always want to consider the name of the string, because that's going to tell you where to start in the chromatic alphabet. Okay, and again, if I'm going a little fast or something, remember you can always pause the video, rewind it, and kind of look at this material as much as needed. Okay, so back to our chromatic alphabet on the guitar in the first position. Remember, the positions are labeled by where your one finger is. So the first position is going to be the first 4 frets because you got 4 fingers and your one finger's at the first. Now remember, we're also going to include the open strings. So if we're on our low E, as we were saying, we got low E, F, F sharp, G, and then G sharp. So, if you remember when we were looking at our chromatic alphabet, which is also in the lesson notes that you'll be receiving as well, you want to kind of memorize it forwards and backwards. And there's always going to be these in-between notes that can be called a sharp or a flat between every single note, except for between the B and the C, as well as the E and the F. And you might be thinking, like, on that first string, or the 6th string, the low E that we just did, you know, from E to F right there, like, why isn't there a sharp in between it? Well, that's one of the spots where it just doesn't have it. And it's just an observation of how music works. Okay. So you have E, F, and then you have those in between notes, F sharp. You have G comes next. Again, it all just moves alphabetical. And then you have G sharp. Okay? And then what would come after G? You would just start over from A. Because remember, the musical alphabet is only 7 letters, and then it repeats, you know, theoretically forever, you know. So after G sharp, you just start over from A. You got your open A string, which is the 5th string, and then you have your A sharp, you have your B, and remember, B and C are just like E and F. B and C only have that half step in between, so from B, there is no B sharp, you just go right on to C. And then you have C sharp. And then the next string is going to be your open D string, which makes sense because we just did C sharp, right? We got A sharp, B, C, and then C sharp. So D would come next, and that's our next open string. D sharp, E, and remember E and F again are right next to each other, so there's no E sharp or F flat. It just goes right on to F. And then you have the F sharp, and then it's time to play your open G string. Then you have the G sharp, then you start over from A, and then A sharp. And if you notice, when we were doing the chromatic alphabet here, on this string we always did 3, and then on to the next string open, right? You might be thinking, well, how come, you know, we're not using that pinky? Well, again, if you look at the chromatic alphabet, you got G, G sharp, A sharp, and then this would be B, right? Well, if you think about the name of our next string, that's the B open, right? So, and that's the same note as this. You can hear that it sounds very similar, right? Almost sounds like the same note, right? So anyway, that's why we don't play the 4th finger, just because it's easier just to play the open string. And then you go on to the, remember, B and C are right next to each other, so there's no B sharp or C flat. You move on to the C sharp, and then you move on to the D, and then you have D sharp, and we're back to the 4 fingers on the string now. The 3rd string, the G string, is the only string that you only do 3. Okay, so back to your 4th fret 2nd string, which is your D sharp, and then it's time for your high E string. So you see how it's all working alphabetical. You just got to remember that those sharp and flat notes are in between every natural note natural note just being the notes without a sharp or flat. Um, there's a sharp or flat note in between every natural note except for between B and C and E and F. So try and just kind of, that's all that we're just going to be focusing on this week. I'll still give you another week to kind of get used to those first chords in the Dead Messages video that I sent last week. But shoot me a text, let me know how you're doing with the stuff, and we can, kind of plan for each lesson. But we'll take it just one little thing at a time. This week, all we're focusing on is naming the notes and being able to kind of hold them down, let them ring out a little bit. Eventually, we'll be counting, but we'll go over that in further lessons. Okay, so we'll take it from there next week, and I hope this will work out for you. And a lot of my students enjoy the video lessons, so hopefully we can keep it going.